Hey YNR fans! Waving hand, welcome to YNR Trends, your go-to spot for the juiciest Young and the Restless updates, shocking spoilers, and all the drama you can't stop talking about. From surprise returns to scandalous twists, we break it all down for you, every day. So grab your coffee, hit that subscribe button, and let's dive right into Genoa City's hottest gossip. The night had a heaviness to it, the kind of weight that presses on your chest before anything is even spoken, and Sally could feel her heart racing as she looked at Billy across the dimly lit room. The ring that had once symbolized a promise, a new beginning, a chance at stability after so many storms, now burned in her palm as though it had been cursed from the very start. She clenched her fist tight around it, her knuckles white, her nails cutting into her skin, and for a moment she thought maybe she could swallow the anger. Maybe she could plaster on a smile, let it go, pretend that what had been gnawing at her didn't matter. But the truth refused to stay quiet. The truth was clawing at her throat, and in one desperate motion, she ripped the ring off and hurled it across the room, the sharp clink against the hardwood echoing like a gunshot between them. Her voice, raw and ragged, filled the silence as she screamed words she had been holding back for months, maybe years. Billy stood frozen, his mouth parting slightly, his blue eyes widening with disbelief as the sound of metal hitting the floor lingered in his ears. He had seen Sally angry before, seen her cut people down with biting words and sharp wit, but this was different. This was primal, guttural, the kind of rage that comes from years of betrayal, disappointment, and self-loathing being forced into a single moment. She screamed not just because of the ring, not just because of the proposal, but because she could no longer stomach the lie she had been living with him. She hated him. The words slipped out in between her shouts, trembling but vicious, and Billy felt them like daggers. Sally hated Billy Abbott, and tonight, she was finally going to tell him why. She paced the room, running her hands through her hair, her voice shaking as she began to unleash every memory that had been haunting her since the day she let him into her world. She reminded him of how he always carried himself like a savior, swooping in with grand gestures, speeches about redemption, and promises that things would be different this time. But nothing was ever different. Every time she needed stability, he offered chaos. Every time she asked for trust, he handed her suspicion. And every time she began to believe in him, he found a way to rip it all apart with his recklessness. Sally screamed about the nights she cried alone, knowing that Billy was out chasing demons he swore he had buried, and how she hated herself for believing that she could fix him. She hated the way he made her doubt her own worth, the way his family looked at her like she was nothing more than a distraction, and the way he stood there pretending to be a man when deep down he was still broken and selfish. Billy tried to interject, raising his hands in defense, his voice trembling as he begged her to calm down, to let him explain, to remind her of the good they shared. But Sally cut him off with a scream so piercing that it stopped him cold. She told him the good was never enough, not when it was overshadowed by lies and disappointments that stacked higher than any moments of joy. She confessed that when he slid the ring onto her finger, she didn't feel love, she felt trapped. She felt like she was walking into a cycle she couldn't escape, the same cycle she had watched him spin with other women before her. She had seen the pattern, lived in its shadow, and she wasn't going to be another victim of Billy Abbott's charm turned poison. The words poured out of her like a flood, raw and unfiltered. She screamed that she hated the way he made her question herself, the way his approval or disapproval dictated her mood, and the way he always carried a piece of Victoria with him, like a ghost that could never be exorcised. Sally admitted that she hated not just the things he did, but the way he made her feel, small, insignificant, disposable. She hated that he reminded her of every man who had ever underestimated her, every person who had doubted her, every voice that had told her she would never be enough. In Billy's eyes, she saw that same doubt, that same dismissive smirk that had haunted her in boardrooms, relationships, and family fights. She screamed that she hated Billy not just for what he was, but for what he made her believe about herself. The ring still lay where it had landed, glinting under the soft light like a cruel reminder of what could have been. Sally stared at it for a moment, her chest heaving, her hands trembling as though she had run a marathon, and then she looked back at Billy with eyes full of tears and fury. She told him that love shouldn't feel like punishment, shouldn't feel like waiting for the other shoe to drop, shouldn't feel like a constant battle to prove herself worthy of scraps of attention. Love should have made her feel safe, but with him, she had never felt more unsafe in her life. Every time he looked at her, she wondered if he was comparing her to someone else. Every time he touched her, she questioned whether he wanted her or simply wanted to distract himself from his own emptiness. And every time he spoke about their future, she couldn't shake the fear that she was just another stop on his road of destruction. Billy tried to step closer, but Sally held up her hand, her voice breaking as she told him not to touch her. She screamed again, the sound echoing in the hollow of her chest, and confessed that she had been lying to herself as much as he had lied to her. She admitted that she had wanted so desperately to believe in them that she ignored all the red flags, all the whispers in her gut telling her this would end in heartbreak. She told him that tonight, she finally saw it clearly, there was no happy ending here, no miracle ring that could erase the pain. What she felt for him had curdled into something toxic, and the only way she could breathe again was to let it out, to admit it, to scream it. She hated Billy Abbott, and nothing he could say or do would change that. Victoria's breath caught, and for a brief second, Claire thought she saw something soften in her eyes. But just as quickly, the hardness returned, and Victoria stepped back, her expression unreadable once again. "Be careful what you wish for, Claire," she said coldly. "Because the truth doesn't always set you free. Sometimes it destroys everything." The intricate and ever-shifting landscape of Genoa City is perpetually defined by secrets, half-truths, and outright deceptions, each one a carefully placed stone in the foundation of relationships both personal and professional. Within this complex web, few secrets have carried the weight, the potential for devastation, and the sheer dramatic force as the one concerning the paternity of Claire Grace's child. The decision by Claire to finally, and fully, embrace a policy of radical honesty, to lay bare the entire unvarnished truth to the one person it will impact most profoundly, Victoria Newman, is not merely a plot point, it is a seismic event that threatens to unravel the very fabric of multiple lives. The question of whether this confession will cause Victoria to go crazy is not one of simple melodrama but a nuanced exploration of trauma, identity, maternal instinct, and the fragile architecture of a mind that has endured more than its share of profound shocks. To understand the potential impact on Victoria, one must first fully appreciate the depth of the betrayal and the bizarre, almost gothic, circumstances that have led to this moment. Claire, initially introduced as a mysterious and troubled figure, was revealed to be the daughter of Victoria's longtime, vengeful doppelganger, Eve Howard, and Cole Howard, Victoria's first great love. This already shocking revelation was merely the prelude to the true bombshell, that Claire had given birth to a son, and that the father was not some unknown man from her past, but Victoria's own brother, Johnny Abbott. The circumstances of this conception are critical. It was not a consensual relationship born of love or even mutual attraction. It was, rather, a calculated and deeply disturbing act of manipulation orchestrated by Jordan, Claire's aunt, who had raised her with a pathological hatred for the Newman family. Johnny, vulnerable and struggling, was essentially preyed upon, his sperm stolen and used to impregnate Claire without his full knowledge or consent. This fact transforms the secret from a mere familial scandal into a profound violation, a crime that implicates Claire, however much a victim she herself was of Jordan's machinations. Victoria's world has been built upon a foundation of control. As the heir apparent to Newman Enterprises, she has been groomed to command, to manage, to project an image of unflappable competence and strength. This external armor, however, has often shielded a deeply emotional and passionate core, one that has been bruised and broken repeatedly, particularly in matters of the heart and family. Her history with Cole is a tapestry of intense love, betrayal, and loss. The disappearance and presumed death of their daughter, Eve, left a wound that never truly healed. The arrival of Claire, initially believed to be that lost daughter, opened that wound anew, only to salt it with the even more twisted reality of her true origins. Victoria's journey toward accepting Claire, toward forging a new, maternal-like bond with her, represents one of the most significant emotional evolutions of her character. It was a hard-won victory over cynicism and pain, a choice to love in the face of extraordinary complication. This hard-won bond is the precarious platform upon which Claire's confession will land. Victoria's acceptance of Claire was predicated on a specific narrative, that Claire was a victim, a pawn in Jordan's game, and that her past actions, while harmful, were born of manipulation and a desperate desire for belonging. This narrative allowed Victoria to compartmentalize. She could extend sympathy and forgiveness to Claire as a fellow victim of the same monstrous force. However, the truth about her son, Johnny, and his role in fathering Claire's child, shatters that narrative completely. It forces a horrific recalibration of Victoria's understanding of recent events. The violation is no longer abstract, it is direct, visceral, and aimed at her immediate family unit. It implicates Claire not just as a victim, but as an active participant in a scheme that victimized her own brother. Even if Claire was unaware at the time, which seems likely, the sheer grotesquerie of the act is enough to overwhelm any previous goodwill. The inevitable confrontation, when it comes, is likely a masterpiece of miscommunication and wounded pride. A seemingly innocent interaction between Sally and Adam is witnessed or misconstrued by Billy. Perhaps it is a conversation about business strategy that appears too intimate, a shared glance that Billy interprets as lingering affection, or even a deliberate manipulation by a third party like Chelsea, who has her own reasons for wanting both Sally and Billy unsettled. Billy, operating from a place of deep-seated insecurity and his ancient grudge, does not ask for clarification. He accuses. He confronts Sally not with vulnerability and a need for reassurance, but with anger and condemnation. He questions her loyalty, her motives, and her love. In this moment, he ceases to be her partner and becomes her prosecutor. For Sally, this is the final, unforgivable betrayal. It is not the accusation itself that destroys her, but what it represents. It is the living proof that everything she feared is true. That Billy never truly saw her. That he never trusted her. That his love was not strong enough to overcome his own demons. That the validation she sought from this relationship was a mirage. The proposal ring on her finger suddenly transforms from a symbol of love and acceptance into a shackle, a constant, gleaming reminder of her own foolishness for believing she could ever truly belong in his world, or that he could ever truly understand hers. The weight of it becomes unbearable. It represents the entire failed experiment, his inability to respect her career, his pathological jealousy, his failure to protect their relationship from the ghosts of his past. So, when she pulls the ring from her finger, the metal is not cold, it is burning with the heat of her humiliation and rage. Her scream is not just anger at Billy, it is a scream of rage at herself for hoping, for believing in the fairy tale. It is a scream of grief for the love she thought they had, which now reveals itself to be a hollow facsimile. Throwing the ring is the most physically expressive thing she can do to sever that connection. It is an act of reclamation. By discarding his symbol, she is reclaiming her autonomy, her integrity, and her self-respect. She is declaring that she would rather have nothing than have a love that comes with constant suspicion and the erasure of her professional identity. The hatred she expresses in that moment is not a lifelong, calcified emotion, it is a white-hot, instantaneous combustion of every disappointment, every slight, every condescending remark, and every jealous glance. It is the hatred one feels for the person who reveals one's own vulnerability to oneself. Billy held up a mirror and forced her to see herself not as the strong, invincible woman she projects, but as the hopeful, hurting person who got fooled again. In the aftermath, the silence that follows the clatter of the ring will be deafening. The gesture is irreversible and absolute. It speaks to a finality that words cannot capture. For Billy, watching this play out, the moment is likely one of stunned confusion. He may have expected a fight, tears, denials, but not this nuclear, symbolic annihilation of their future. He may truly believe his accusations were justified, that his jealousy was a natural reaction to a perceived threat. He will fail to see that his actions were the threat itself. He will not understand that his greatest sin was not jealousy, but emotional laziness, his failure to do the hard work of truly knowing and trusting his partner, preferring instead to force her into the neat box of his own redemption story. The analysis of this single, explosive moment reveals the intricate mechanics of modern soap opera storytelling at its best. It is a moment that could only land with the weight of history behind it, both the characters' histories and the audience's understanding of them. Sally's scream is the culmination of 1,000 quiet wounds. Her hatred is not for the man Billy is, but for the man he proved himself to be, a man who offered her the world but then insisted she live in it on his terms, within the confines of his insecurities. It is the hatred born of a promise broken before it was even fully made, a dream dissolved by the very person who sold it to her. The throne ring is not just a rejection of a marriage proposal, it is a rejection of a fundamentally flawed conception of love, one that asks one partner to diminish themselves for the comfort of the other. It is a declaration that for Sally Spectra, respect is not a separate entity from love, it is its very foundation. And without it, there is nothing left to do but scream and let the diamond, like their shattered future, disappear into the darkness.